You're listening to the Otis Jiry channel.
Ruined Sheets by Chris Mallory, narrated by Otis Jiry. The third time the police arrested me for child abuse, I tried to run from the crime scene. My son's bedroom, still clenching my boy's blood-soaked sheets. Officer Wallace slapped on the cuffs, then threw me in the back of his car as the paramedics were loading my emotional 7-year-old into an ambulance. Strapped to the gurney, face awash in gore, eyes wide, he reached out with both hands, breaking the paramedics' restraints. "Daddy! Daddy!" I slammed my shoulder into the cruiser's door and screamed. It was no use. Seconds later, the ambulance pulled away in one direction, then the cruiser went another while I continued thrashing around in the back, cursing the witness. Wallace stared into the rearview, paying more attention to me than the foggy road ahead of him. After a while, I calmed down and closed my eyes. I knew what kind of treatment awaited me, but there was nothing I could do but play the game. At the station, Wallace and his partner showed me photos of my boy's bedroom. The brand-new white sheets I had just purchased for him were stained bright red. Pools of crimson spread across the floor where the blood had flowed over the edge of his mattress. The walls looked as if they had cried red tears. Stalactites of slaughter hung in congealed masses from the ceiling. Complete carnage. No one should have survived, and yet my boy did. I rolled my eyes, then slammed my chained fists on the table. It's not the first time. You aren't showing me anything I haven't seen before. Hatred burned in Wallace's eyes, the kind reserved for subhuman waste or disease-spreading rats. You hurt him in the past. Are you saying you hurt other children? He jumped up from his chair, grabbed my t-shirt, and stood within an inch of my face. The corners of his eyes spasmed, and he clenched his jaw before baring his teeth. Give me a reason, you sick freak. Give me a reason. I knew then what kind of man I was dealing with, and laughed despite myself. A reason? Fine. How's this? Those pictures are mild in comparison to last time, and the time before that, and the time before. Wallace's partner whispered, What in God's name did you do to that poor child? Without turning away from Wallace, I said, Not another word until you let me see my boy. Wallace threw me back down the chair. Get this piece of shit out of my sight. I sat up straight, smoothed my blood-spattered t-shirt, and did my best to keep a smug grin on my face. Being the monster they wanted wasn't easy, but I knew from experience he would likely hurt me if I tried to play the concerned, innocent father card. The whole time I'd been thinking about my boy, swarmed by social workers and doctors. Luckily, he knew better than to talk. Daddy had taught him well. After a sleepless night on a hard cod of stinking piss, Wallace's partner called my name and let me out of the holding cell. The paper he handed me had been stamped in red with the words, Charges dropped. I collected my belongings, made a few quick phone calls, then stood outside waiting for a taxi in the thick morning fog. It had rained again, and the light mist blowing in the wind cooled my face. Freedom felt great. I couldn't wait to find my boy. Wallace came running out of the police station. I knew he wanted to rough me up, or worse. For 15 minutes he stared daggers into the side of my head. Finally he said, The captain let you free, and he wouldn't tell me why. I nodded. Wallace took a step back. I don't know what the fuck is going on, but this isn't over. I nodded again, knowing exactly what he thought of me, knowing how confused and angry he would be without answers. Out of the corner of my eye, I watched him, seething, and wondered if the next time he put his hand on his service revolver, if he was going to shoot me in the back of the head. The taxi pulled up. I let out a relieved sigh and climbed inside. Hospital, quick. The driver went to pull away. No, wait, I said, and the car came to a stop. I wound down the window. Follow me if you want to see something. Wallace nodded, his face giving away nothing. I took the blank expression to mean he still wanted to kill me. I nodded back, smiled, then tapped the window, signaling the driver to go. At the hospital roundabout, my boy waited outside in a wheelchair, smiling. 2 women in scrubs stood behind him, pale and visibly frightened. The second I exited the taxi, my boy, looking good as new, ran and jumped into my arms. The 2 women approached me almost cautiously, while Wallace edged along to the side, mouth hung open. I hugged my boy as if I hadn't seen him in years. What did you tell them? Nothing, Daddy. Are we going to have to move again? I nodded. It isn't your fault. The old lady next door heard your screams before I could mask them. Wallace shook his head. He was. I saw. How? One of my boy's doctors said, once we cleared away all the blood, the other finished, we couldn't find a mark. Not a single cut, scratch, or bruise. Far as we can tell, he's a perfectly healthy little boy. My boy tugged at my sleeve. Can we go, Daddy? Yeah. I climbed into the taxi, still holding him tight. Wait, Wallace leaned in the window. Is this some sick joke? I saw what you did to that child. I saw the room. I closed my eyes. As you can see, he's perfectly fine. That doesn't make any sense. I never said it would. You told me you've done worse. Made it clear you've hurt other kids. I have that on tape. Listen to your tape again. I said I've seen it happen before. Wallace narrowed his eyes. Think you're smart? Throwing animal blood over a kid, mentally torturing him? That's enough to put you away. He smiled, leaned closer, and whispered, Even if it isn't, I won't let this go. I'll stop you myself. I hugged my boy tighter, remembered how sour events can turn when some would-be hero has it out for you based on preconceived notions and tinfoil hat theories about a child's well-being. My boy lost his mother to a vigilante, murdered to protect him from harm that she never inflicted. Since then, I've learned to adapt. My act at the surprised crime scene, my attitude at the station, the invitation for Wallace to follow, even what I would say to him next, calculated damage control. All of it to protect my boy. You want me dead, but you aren't the first person that's threatened me and my boy. I would tell you to leave it to the caseworkers, but, officer, have you taken a look around? Wallace turned toward the doctors. Where are they? Where's that man from social services? One of the doctors swallowed hard. Gone. Said there was nothing he could do. I bit my thumbnail, wondering how many more times I would need to deal with a situation like this. Tell him what you found, please, Doctor. The doctors looked at each other, then at Wallace. We thought it had to be animal blood, one of them said. It wasn't, the other added. The blood is definitely human. It's my boy's blood, I said, and they know it. Both doctors nodded. Yes, we triple-checked, one of them said. The blood's a match for the child. The other stepped forward. Sir, we would like to keep him for some further tests. I sighed. No tests. Never again. Thank you both for cleaning my boy up. They nodded, then turned and walked back into the hospital, muttering something about devils and miracles. Wallace seemed to deflate. He knelt and stared at my boy. The rain had picked up again, and it made it look as if he were crying. He opened his mouth, but I put up my hand. This has happened so many times before. He wakes up screaming and covered in his own blood, more than could fit in his little body. How am I supposed to believe this? I don't expect you to believe anything. I asked you here because I don't want you to be a problem for us. We need to move and change our identities again before the doctors send in their report. How often does it happen? Every few months, sometimes every day of the week, it varies. The longest lapse was 2 years, 4 through 6. When it happens, I clean him up. If we're caught, we leave fast. There are people who want to lock him up and study this. I can't let that happen. I look down at my boy. Besides, it's just an accident during the night, nothing to be ashamed of. Right, buddy? Right, Daddy. I smiled. Wallace clicked his tongue. This is insane. Maybe so, but it's true. I pressed my palms to my boy's ears. I've been dealing with this condition since he was born. The blood used to terrify me, but it's not what scares me anymore. While waking him from the screaming, he's begun to speak. Wallace scratched his ear. His tone lowered and said, What does he say? I press a little harder on my boy's ears. The blood debt will be paid. The blood debt will be paid. I took my hands away and nudged my boy playfully at his side. You ready to go home so we can pack? Ready. That's my boy. As the taxi pulled off, I thought about the 9mm backup plan locked in the safe at home. So far, I haven't needed to take a life to protect my boy. I turned and nodded at Officer Wallace standing in the middle of the road, hoping he'd stay away. He faded into the morning fog until there was nothing left except a clean, white sheet of mist. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to listen to this story in its entirety. If you enjoy what you hear and what I do and would like to support me and my efforts, visit my Patreon page at patreon.com/Otis Jiry. If you haven't yet, please hit the like button and subscribe today, and share this video with everyone on your social media. It helps more than you could ever imagine. Again, thank you for listening and have a great day. God bless you.